You walk into an Apple store with a phone that technically still works. The battery isn't great anymore. There's a small crack on the screen. Nothing urgent, nothing broken, but you start telling yourself a story. This is for work. This will make me more productive. This is an investment. So you upgrade. You spend $1,200 on the latest iPhone Pro Max in titanium. You leave the store feeling sharp, accomplished, like someone who has their life together. Then, you sit in your car and actually look at it. The phone is flawless, clean lines, premium finish. It looks like the future. And suddenly, your old, frayed charging cable looks embarrassing. Plugging a $1,200 device into a $5 gas station cable feels wrong. So you grab the MagSafe charger. That's another $40. Later that night, you set the phone on your nightstand, and now the cheap plastic case looks ridiculous. This isn't a phone for bargain accessories. You need the leather case. Another $60. Then comes the final realization. Your wired headphones don't even work with it. If you're going to do this properly, you might as well get the AirPods Pro. That's $250 more. In less than 2 days, a $1,200 purchase quietly became a $1,600 one, and you never once sat down and decided to spend that extra $400. That's the part most people miss. This isn't about being irresponsible or bad with money. This is a predictable psychological chain reaction. The same mechanism that explains why lottery winners often go broke and why buying a dream home can turn into a financial trap. It's called the Diderot Effect. My name is Michael, and on this channel, we break down the invisible forces that quietly drain your money without you realizing it. Most people believe they buy things because they need them. Today, I'm going to show you something uncomfortable. You usually buy things because your other things are pressuring you to. And if you want to stop that spiral and actually keep the money you earn, stick with me, because this entire pattern can be traced back to a single moment in history and a man who lost everything over something as trivial as a bathrobe. To understand why spending feels automatic, we need to go back to France in 1765. There lived a well-known philosopher named Denis Diderot. He helped create the encyclopedia. He was respected, brilliant, influential, and completely broke. Diderot lived simply. He wore worn-out clothes, his rugs were old, his chair was unstable, his library was dusty and modest, and despite all of that, he was content. He was content until one unexpected decision rewired everything. Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia, heard about Denis Diderot's financial troubles. She admired his work and decided to help in an unusual way. She offered to buy his entire library for a huge sum of money, roughly the equivalent of $50,000 today, then let him keep every single book. Overnight, Diderot went from barely scraping by to financially secure. So he did what almost anyone would do in that situation. He bought himself a stunning scarlet dressing gown. Not a necessity, a luxury, the kind of robe worn by people who belong to wealth. He put it on, stood in the mirror, and for the first time, he felt rich. The mismatch bothered him more than it should have. The desk didn't deserve the robe, so he replaced it with a beautiful mahogany writing table. Problem solved, temporarily. Now the robe and the desk looked perfect together, until he glanced at the floor. His old, worn rug suddenly looked pathetic next to the polished wood. It dragged the entire room down, so he bought an expensive Damascus rug. Then the rug made the curtains look cheap. The curtains made the chair look embarrassing. The chair made the rest of the room feel unfinished. One upgrade demanded another, and another, and another. Paintings, furniture, sculptures, mirrors. Weeks turned into months. Diderot became obsessed with balance, with harmony, with making sure everything around him matched the standards set by that single scarlet robe. By the end of it, he had replaced nearly every object he owned, and he was broke again. Later, he wrote an essay called "Regrets on Parting with My Old Dressing Gown." In it, he captured the entire tragedy in one sentence. "I was the absolute master of my old dressing gown, but I have become a slave to my new one." That sentence is the Diderot Effect in its purest form. The moment a new, higher status possession enters your life, it quietly forces everything else to level up or be replaced. Spending doesn't feel reckless, it feels necessary, logical, even responsible. We like to believe we own our things. In reality, once this process starts, our things start owning us. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Michael, that's an interesting story about a philosopher from 300 years ago, but I don't live in 18th century France. I don't wear scarlet robes. How does this actually apply to my life? It applies constantly. In fact, the Diderot effect is far more dangerous today than it was in 1765. Back then, consumption was limited, choices were limited, temptation was slow. Today, the opposite is true. Modern marketing is engineered, deliberately, to trigger this effect with extreme precision. Nothing about this is accidental. Let's look at a modern example almost everyone recognizes, the fitness identity spiral. You decide you want to get in shape, not casually, seriously. You want to be disciplined, consistent, healthy. So you make a big move and buy a Peloton bike, around $1,500. It feels justified, responsible even. You tell yourself, this isn't spending, this is an investment in my health. And that belief is sincere. Then the bike arrives. You turn it on, the instructors appear on the screen. They look lean, focused, professional. They look like cyclists, and suddenly you become aware of something you hadn't thought about before. You don't match the bike. You're standing there in an old cotton t-shirt and loose gym shorts you've had since high school. Functionally, there's nothing wrong with them, but psychologically, they don't fit the new version of you that the bike represents. That creates discomfort, so you fix it. You buy proper cycling shoes, $150, because real cyclists don't ride in sneakers. Then you add moisture-wicking compression shorts, $80, because sweat shouldn't feel amateur. Then the branded tank top, $50, because now you want to look like someone who takes this seriously. But it doesn't stop there. Now the bike itself looks out of place. It's sitting in a cluttered living room surrounded by random furniture, cables, and distractions. This doesn't feel like a training environment, so you clean it up. You buy a yoga mat, some dumbbells, maybe better lighting, maybe a mirror, maybe a new smart TV so the workouts feel immersive and intentional. Without ever deciding to go on a spending spree, you've quietly crossed a line. You didn't just buy a bike, you bought an identity. And this is the heart of the Diderot effect, identity consistency. As humans, we are deeply uncomfortable with mismatch. When our external world doesn't align with how we see ourselves internally, it creates psychological tension. We feel off, incomplete, out of sync, and we instinctively try to resolve that tension. High-status purchases are especially powerful because they don't just upgrade utility, they upgrade self-image. Take cars. If you see yourself as a practical, low-maintenance person, driving a Honda Civic feels natural, wearing jeans feels fine, eating fast food feels normal, furnishing your place cheaply feels reasonable. Everything matches the story you tell yourself about who you are. But the moment you stretch your budget and buy a Porsche, that story changes. You are no longer just someone who drives a car. You are now a Porsche person. And Porsche people behave differently. Porsche people don't wear scratched sunglasses. They don't sit on flimsy furniture. They don't host dinners with paper plates. The car becomes what psychologists call an anchor item. It establishes a new baseline for what feels acceptable in your life. Anything below that baseline starts to feel wrong, not logically, emotionally. And that feeling doesn't go away on its own. So, you upgrade. The car pressures the wardrobe pressures the social settings you're comfortable in. Those settings pressure your vacations. The vacations pressure your luggage, your hotels, your spending habits. Each upgrade feels small, rational, justified, but collectively they compound into a lifestyle your income may not actually support. And here's the critical insight most people miss. You're not spending money because you want more stuff. You're spending money to keep your personal narrative consistent. You're maintaining a story about who you are, and once that story changes, your expenses follow, whether you like it or not. That's why this pattern quietly destroys financial progress. It doesn't feel reckless, it feels necessary. And that's what makes it so dangerous. This is exactly why the phrase "fake it till you make it" is not just bad advice, it's financially poisonous. When you fake success by buying symbols of status before your income, savings, and cash flow can truly support them, those symbols don't stay isolated purchases. They turn into pressure. They reshape expectations. They quietly rewrite how you think you're supposed to live. Buy a Rolex too early, and that watch becomes an obligation. It doesn't scream at you, but it whispers constantly. It tells you your clothes no longer match, your car feels beneath you, your usual dinner spots feel cheap. Suddenly, you're not upgrading because you want to, you're upgrading to avoid feeling out of place with something you already own. That single object starts draining money far beyond its sticker price. And here's the mistake almost everyone makes. They calculate cost in isolation. They look at the price tag and ask, can I afford this $500 item? If the answer is yes, they move forward. That's the wrong framework. The correct framework is this. What is the full chain reaction cost of bringing this item into my life? Because ownership is rarely just ownership, it's integration. Let's walk through one of the most common and destructive examples, home renovation. You decide your kitchen needs an upgrade. Nothing extravagant, you set a reasonable budget. $10,000 for new cabinets. You've saved for it. It fits your numbers. It feels controlled. The cabinets are installed. They're bright, clean, modern. Instantly, the kitchen feels elevated. You're proud of it. Then, something subtle happens. Your refrigerator, which worked perfectly fine yesterday, suddenly looks old, slightly yellowed, out of place. Not broken, just embarrassing by comparison. It clashes with the new cabinets, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you replace it. Stainless steel, another $2,000. Now the cabinets and fridge match. They feel intentional, premium. Until you look down. The vinyl flooring, perfectly functional, now looks cheap, thin, dated. The contrast between the sleek cabinets above and the floor below creates constant visual tension. The room doesn't feel finished. So you rip out the floor and install hardwood, another $5,000. At this point, the kitchen looks incredible, like something out of a design magazine. But your house is open concept. You're standing in your upgraded kitchen and your eyes drift into the living room. And now the living room feels wrong. The old sofa looks tired, the wall color looks dull, the lighting feels depressing. Nothing's broken, nothing changed, but everything feels unacceptable. The renovation spreads. You repaint the entire downstairs, you buy a new sectional, maybe a rug, maybe new shelves. You tell yourself it's about flow and cohesion. By the time it's over, the final cost isn't $10,000, it's $35,000. And here's the brutal truth. The cabinets didn't improve your life, they destabilized it. Those cabinets were the scarlet robe. They became the anchor item, the upgrade that reset your standards and forced everything else to catch up. Before the upgrade, you were fine. You didn't hate the fridge, you didn't notice the floor, you didn't feel embarrassed by the sofa.
The dissatisfaction didn't exist until the upgrade created it. That leads us to a deeply uncomfortable realization. Many upgrades are actually downgrades wearing a disguise. They downgrade financial flexibility. They downgrade peace of mind. They upgrade stress, obligation, and maintenance. They convert neutral objects into problems that demand money to fix. When Diderot wore his old robe, it was functional. He wiped ink on it. He didn't worry about stains. It served him. The moment he upgraded, the robe stopped being a tool and became a standard, and that standard enslaved everything around it. That same trap plays out today, just with better lighting, better marketing, and better excuses. And if you don't learn to see it, it will quietly erase years of financial progress without ever feeling like a mistake. He was the master of the old robe. When it got stained, he didn't care. When it tore, he didn't panic. He used it freely. He lived in it. It was a tool, nothing more. The moment the new robe entered his life, that relationship inverted. Suddenly, he was afraid of it, afraid of spilling ink, afraid of sitting the wrong way, afraid of damaging something that now felt precious. The robe stopped serving him, and he started serving the robe. He became careful, stiff, restricted. He lost freedom. And this pattern is everywhere in modern life. Buy a brand new expensive white couch and watch how your behavior changes overnight. You stop letting people drink red wine in the living room. You start watching how guests sit. You tense up when someone moves too quickly. The dog isn't allowed on the furniture anymore. Eventually, you stop relaxing in the space entirely. The couch owns the room. You're no longer living in your home, you're managing it, maintaining it, preserving it. You've turned into the curator of a showroom instead of the resident of the house. That's the hidden cost of upgrades no one talks about. They often reduce freedom instead of increasing it. So the real question isn't, how do I stop spending money? The real question is, how do I stop objects from taking control of my behavior? Because completely rejecting comfort and quality isn't realistic. You don't need to live in a cave. You just need systems, guardrails that stop the spiral before it starts. That's where firewalls come in. Here is the 3-step defense strategy against the Diderot effect. Strategy 1. Predict the chain reaction. Before you buy any upgrade item, new car, new console, new suit, you pause. Not to check the price tag, to run a prediction. You ask, what else will this item quietly demand from me once it's in my life? If you buy a PlayStation 5, does it demand a 4K TV so the graphics don't feel wasted? Does it demand an extra controller for guests, a PlayStation Plus subscription, better headphones, more storage? None of these are unreasonable individually, but together they form a system. So you write it all down. Item cost plus ecosystem cost. If the PS5 is $500, but the real cost of owning it properly is $1,500, that's the number you evaluate. And then you ask one honest question. Can I afford the system without debt, stress, or future regret? If the answer is no, you don't buy the anchor item, because anchor items don't sit quietly. They pull upgrades behind them like gravity. Buy one too early, and you're not purchasing entertainment, you're inviting a financial vampire into your house. Strategy 2. The buy one, give one rule. The Diderot effect feeds on accumulation. We add new things without removing old ones, and suddenly our environment becomes a museum of mismatched standards. That visual clutter creates constant psychological pressure to upgrade everything else. You stop this by enforcing a hard rule. Every upgrade replaces something. Buy a new pair of sneakers, one old pair leaves the house. Buy a new jacket, an old one goes. Buy a new toaster, the old toaster is gone. No storage, no just in case, no backup versions hiding in closets. This rule forces clarity. If the new item isn't worth losing something you already own, then it wasn't a real upgrade, it was just novelty. And novelty is the fuel that keeps the Diderot effect alive. Fewer objects mean fewer comparisons. Fewer comparisons mean less dissatisfaction. Less dissatisfaction means fewer spending impulses. Your environment should feel intentional, not crowded with silent demands. This rule forces you to value what you already own. It prevents you from building a silent shrine of possessions that exist only to be protected, admired, and stressed over. It keeps you in the mindset of a user, not a collector. You own things to serve your life, not to display your status. Now comes the third strategy. This one makes people uncomfortable, but it works better than anything else. Strategy 3. Practice strategic downgrading. This is the nuclear option, and sometimes it's the only way to reset your baseline. Strategic downgrading means deliberately choosing less than you could afford in at least one highly visible area of your life. Drive a slightly older car, even if you could buy newer.
Wear a watch that's simple and functional. Choose items that don't broadcast status. Why? Because anchor items set expectations. When your anchor items are humble, they create freedom. If you drive a beat-up Toyota truck, nobody expects you to wear a $2,000 suit. Nobody judges you for wearing jeans. Nobody thinks twice when you eat a burrito in the car. There's no pressure to perform, no pressure to upgrade, no pressure to maintain an image. You can live. By keeping your status symbols low, you dramatically reduce the required cost of everything else in your life. You create what I call a low-maintenance identity. And let me be very clear about this. A low-maintenance identity is one of the most profitable assets you can ever own. It allows you to stack cash quietly while everyone else is busy upgrading furniture, outfits, vacations, and lifestyles just to stay consistent with a story they never meant to tell. While others are curating their museum, you're building leverage. Now, let me be clear. There is nothing wrong with nice things. I like nice things. Comfort is fine. Quality is fine. The problem isn't the object. The problem is not understanding the game you're playing. Consumer culture is engineered to make you feel incomplete, to convince you that happiness is one purchase away, that fulfillment is just one upgrade down the road. But Diderot showed us the truth over 300 years ago, that one purchase doesn't complete the puzzle, it scrambles it, it resets the board, it raises the standard, and it forces you to start the game over at a higher cost. So don't become a slave to your robe. Be the master of your life. If you want to learn how to build real wealth without relying on appearances or constant upgrades, check out the next video where I break down the Coast Fire method, a strategy designed for people who value freedom over flexing. And if this video saved you from making a stupid purchase this week, hit the like button, subscribe for more financial sanity. My name is Michael. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, don't buy the robe.